Over the last several years, Stellantis really hasn't been making much news in regards to their cars and making very, let's just say, impressive vehicles. They have a lineup of different brands such as Dodge, Jeep, and many others within the Stellantis brand, which also include Fiat, for example, Alfa Romeo. Unfortunately, none of those vehicles have really come up with anything that's that impressive. But right behind me, I have the Jeep Grand Cherokee L Summit Reserve, which is their top-of-the-line Grand Cherokee L. And this week, we're gonna find out if this car actually does impress. As always, guys, I'm gonna be doing an exterior, interior, engine, cargo, and of course, driving impressions. Guys, if you're new to the channel, welcome. This is Rich with Cars. I'm Rich. Make sure to join, subscribe, like it if you enjoy this video, and stay tuned for weekly reviews of different types of vehicles. So guys, let's strap in and take a look. So taking a quick look at the exterior, we get to see a very squared off look. Jeep actually changed some of their design features and the design of the entire Grand Cherokee lineup several years ago. Now, in this particular vehicle, we have a squared off look, but we have the signature, I guess, 7-slot design of the front grille. At least they kept that, but I'm not a huge fan of the headlights, as you guys can see. Kind of like squared off. Nothing really stands out when it comes to the design. Not many design features or design lines as we see on the hood. I saved that from the front. It kind of looks a bit like a Range Rover perhaps, but sort of like a cheapened out Range Rover. As we go off to the side, we get to see some upgraded wheels that comes with this Reserve or Summit Reserve. These are 21-inch in size, but I'm not a huge fan design itself. It's a multi-spoke, but at the end of the day, nothing that really jumps out at you. From the side view, we get to see a bit of a squared off look once again. And I do like the fact that it's a simple sort of design feature where you have basically a straight line that goes on the shoulder line all the way to the back. Aside from that, I guess they made the actual roof line over here black just to give it a lower sort of look. Move further behind, we get to see a small roof spoiler right here in the rear. I do like the fact of the window accenting, how it goes all the way to the rear and then wraps around the rear window too. That's a nice little design feature that they did integrate into the vehicle. Then you get to see the taillights, how they wrap around the rear portion or the rear 3/4. And then we get to see thinned out taillights as well with the exhaust pipes at the bottom. So like I said before, not a crazy exterior design that really jumps out at you. At the end of the day, it is a luxury version of the Jeep Grand Cherokee. And frankly speaking, it doesn't really say much when it comes to the design itself. There's nothing really that makes it that special. Doesn't really have much of an imposing look or a great stance from my perspective. A little feature here on the side of the vehicle, you get to see the scripture for Grand Cherokee and of course the American flag. So this is the key fob to the Grand Cherokee L Summit Reserve. I don't think it's any different than any of the other Grand Cherokee trims, but nothing too crazy. You got some black plastic alongside with some silver plastic on the side to give it a sort of a chrome look, and you got the basic buttons. You got unlock, lock, you got an automatic starter, and then of course you got the trunk opening and of course the panic button right here. Let's see how the trunk opens here in the rear. This is a 3-row, so you get to see a bit of the seats. So like I said before, the 3rd row seats are up, so it does take up a little bit of your trunk space. I'll show you guys on the screen what the volume is on the trunk area or the cargo area for the L Summit Reserve with both the 3rd row seats up and the 2nd row seats up and down. And you guys will get to see. The other cool thing is that from here, you get different buttons where you see 3R and you see 2R. So you can take down the 3rd row seats if you want. So you guys can see. So that will give you quite a bit more space, and you can see how that actually opens up quite a bit. And then if you want to do the second row as well, you can do that as well on one side and the other side as well. So that really opens up the trunk space area. Now you can also set the rear hatch to stay at a specific level. And then you also have a little storage area here under the floor space of the cargo area. So ultimately, the trunk space is quite large once you take down all the seats, and it's quite versatile as well. So now we're here under the hood of the Summit L Reserve, or the L Summit Reserve. This is the V6 version, which is a 3.6 liter, 24 valve, naturally aspirated V6, and it pushes 293 horsepower. So if you guys are looking for towing capacity, I don't think this is gonna be what you're looking for, because this has a 6,200 pound tow rating, whereas the V8 has a 7,200 pound tow rating as well. And at the same time, we also have on this, I'll show you guys the numbers on the screen in terms of its power figures. So on the engine, it's 293 horsepower at 6,400 RPM and 260 pounds per foot of torque at 4,000 RPM. I'll also show you guys what the EPA fuel efficiency numbers are. But at the end of the day, this does do a well enough job if you're just looking to drive around the city. But if you're looking to do a little bit more in terms of workload regarding towing and maybe off-roading, you might want to opt for the V8 version of this vehicle, which offers a little bit more in terms of power, whereas the V8 actually gives you a 357 horsepower rating. So at the end of the day, it really depends on what you're looking for. I'll also show you guys the performance numbers, which aren't that great on this vehicle. It's not a performance vehicle at the end of the day. It's more of a luxury / off-roading SUV. So now let's take a look at the interior. As soon as you open the doors, you don't get much of a solid feel. You do get this feel, I guess you could say that door handle feels a little bit plasticky, a little bit cheap. But as we get to the door cards, we get to see open pore wood. I'm not a big fan of this color of the open pore wood, but it is a nice material nevertheless. You get some leather here on the top, and then you have this quilted leather here that is on the side panel alongside with some additional leather further down. The cool thing is that on the Summit, you do get sort of leather all the way to the bottom, and you have quite a bit of storage space. You have a small storage area over there, nice little cubby for a 500 ml bottle, and then additional storage space right here, right behind it. They could have done a little bit better. You have gloss black inlays over here alongside with some functions. And then you have your memory seats over here as well. As we get to the seats themselves, you get to see the Summit badging on the side sill. Some controls for the seats. You have multi-directional seats alongside with bolster controls for the side bolsters. And then the seat themselves, when I first sat in it, it felt a little bit stiff, but the design itself seems quite nice. You have some piping on the side of the headrest and on the side of the actual side bolsters as well. You have some quilted leather on the side of the bolsters, so that gives it a nice little design. The seats themselves are relatively comfortable with some adjustability to them. Now from the rear, you get to see a rear sunshade. It's manually operated, and you get to see also similar types of trimming with the open pore wood, the quilted leather on the door card, and then you have also leather that goes all the way down. So this seat right here in the front is actually positioned to my driving position. Let's take a look at how it feels once you get in. So I'm right here sitting in the back. I have a good solid 3 inches of space between my knee and the front seat. I'm 6'1" in height, and I feel very comfortable and spacious here in the rear. You have rear climate controls alongside with heated and ventilated seats. You have additional plugs for USB-C and USB-A alongside with a 12-volt outlet as well, which is a regular type of outlet, not a cigarette style. So that's very useful as well. You have some cup holders here in the middle alongside with a storage cubby. And another storage bin right here that goes under the armrest. The other cool feature as well is for the people in the third row, you have a little lever over here. You can open that up, flip this over, and it gives you additional storage right here as well. So the people in the third row can actually store some additional things here, and it's relatively deep as well. And you also get to have some additional HVAC venting that comes out of the B pillar. As you guys can see, this comes out of the B pillar for additional cooling as well. So trying to get into the rear third row seats, I had to fold this down and move it forward on the tracks right there. There's a lever right in front of the seat that I move forward. If I were to sit here, I can show you guys that somebody in the third row would be a little bit cramped, especially somebody of my height. My knees are touching the second row, the back of the second row. Like I said before, I'm 6'1". I'm here. I have maybe about half an inch of space between the top of my head and the ceiling. So at the end of the day, it's not great for long trips for adults in the rear, but I think for kids, it's probably gonna be comfortable enough. The other thing that I wanted to show you guys is the fact that you do have HVAC controls over here. You have a little cup holder, and then you have, once again, USB-A and USB-C as well, both in the rear. Inside, we get to see the steering wheel right here. It's a 3-spoke steering wheel with some paddle shifters that are steering wheel mounted. Not a great feeling on the paddle shifters, and you do have some buttons right behind the paddle shifters for other types of controls as well. This is a typical Stellantis type of feature that you see across many vehicles. You have multi-functions on the steering wheel themselves for media, cruise control features as well. And then we get to see that the gauge cluster is fully digital, and you have multi-views on the display. You can change it to many different types of views if you'd like. As you guys can see, you can have the gauges that take over the display, and you can have other types of functions and features to show you information on the vehicle itself. As we move towards the middle, we get to see a 10.1-inch navigation or infotainment display. You get some additional buttons here on the top for additional functionality, which include everything from your hazards, your lane keep assist, your auto start stop. You can turn that off, and other functions as well. I do like Uconnect. It's always been pretty solid. You have, quite a bit of adjustability. You can add widgets if you'd like. So for example, I can add climate, or if I want, I could add just more seat controls if I wanted to. So, and it's also quite responsive at the same time. You have shortcut buttons here at the bottom, which are part of the digital screen as well. So you have camera views around the vehicle, but then you also have this other camera feature that you can see the interior of the car, which is pretty cool. And then on the right side, you can actually zoom in on a specific seat. So if you have kids in the car, it gives you a very detailed view of what's going on in the back. So that might be useful for families. I do like the fact that you have a mix of different touch controls. You have your HVAC controls over here, which are all touch. Wireless charger alongside with some USB-C and USB-A plugs over there with an auxiliary plug. And then you also have a 12-volt cigarette style charger over there. You can also close this if you like. The only downside though, if you close it, gloss black once again. I'm not a big fan of that. You have your gear selector, which is just a knob. So nothing too out of the ordinary, just pretty straightforward. And then you have your drive control over here, or drive modes, and then you also have air suspension. So you can actually change the level of the suspension over here if you like. And now the vehicle is actually moving up, and you guys can see that on the gauge cluster right here. You can see how the vehicle is shifting up. And then of course we have additional buttons here for hill descent control, and then 4-wheel drive low as well. You have some cup holders here in the middle, which can also close up. Once again, gloss black, which I'm not a big fan of. And then you have the middle console over here with one and then 2 different levels as well. I believe it's a 950 watt, 19 speaker Macintosh sound system. And you guys can see the tweeters saying Macintosh right there on the top. Something to show you its additional controls on the vehicle is its vehicle dynamics. You guys can see some of its off-road pick capabilities. You can see the pitch and the roll. You can select the terrain on the vehicle itself. And then of course, you can also check the suspension, like I said. Now, if you want to take a look at the passenger screen, you have a passenger screen here as well, which allows for additional functionality. So that's pretty nice to have. Then you also have some additional controls here on the ceiling for your sunroof. And then of course you have some nice materials with Alcantara as well that we get to see over here in terms of an MSRP of $76,400. All right guys, so driving the 2024 Jeep Grand Cherokee L Summit Reserve. So I've been driving this for a few minutes now. It doesn't feel super refined, and the suspension is a little bit, I guess it's compliant. One thing that I gotta tell you guys is some of the touch points in this vehicle feel a little bit cheap. Namely, the steering wheel, some of the inlays on the steering wheel do feel cheap, especially the HVAC vents, like the actual vents themselves, when you adjust them, they feel very sort of flimsy, if I could say. So the engine itself, like I said, it's a 3.6 liter V6. It doesn't have a great sound to it when you're accelerating. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of it, but it does have a bit of peppiness despite its low power figures, and this being such a large and heavy vehicle. So right now I have it in auto drive mode. So basically, I guess it just it sees how you actually drive the vehicle. Let's put it into a sport. Let's see how that is. So I get a little change on the graphics on the gauge cluster. It just shows sport. So brake feel is a little bit numb as well. You don't get much of a feel on the top of the pedal. I did notice a bit more responsiveness when I put into sport drive mode. So at least the engine's a little bit more responsive. Transmission, I mean, I have it in automatic right now, so I'm not changing the gears myself. So, and I'm not driving in high speeds to really know when the vehicle's changing gears and to see if it's actually searching for the gears itself. But I can tell you that in sport mode, it does keep the gears a little bit on the lower end, so it actually lets the revs go up a little bit higher. So I just went into manual mode. I try to change the gears myself a little bit. There's at least a bit of a delay, I would say, when you're actually changing the gears from the time that you pull back on the shift paddle to the time that it actually shifts. The other thing also is that the suspension right now, despite the fact that I'm in sport, it's still very soft, I would say. The good thing though is that you don't get to feel much of the bumps though. So the brake feels a little bit, like I said before, it's a bit numb and a bit firm as well. It doesn't have much of travel on the brake pedal itself. The other thing I want to mention to you guys, aside from some of the other touch points that feel kind of cheap, is also like the middle part of the console. Like, this doesn't feel very good quality. I mean, it doesn't creak like BMWs, for example. It creaks a little bit, but still, that it just doesn't feel that high quality. So this part does actually creak, the panel over here, and it does move a little bit. But yeah, ultimately, I wouldn't say that it's doesn't feel that it's that well put together. So it does accelerate pretty well. I mean, given the fact that it's a heavy car and it's a V6 with not that much power, it's actually surprising how it pushes. I can tell you that there's a lot of body roll. This car definitely should not be driven in sport. I mean, if you do need to have a bit of extra, I guess if you want to say pushing power or peppiness, then yeah, you could put it into sport. But aside from that, I wouldn't recommend it, because it doesn't feel very comfortable. This is more of a vehicle to drive in sort of like a comfort setting. The other thing I wanted to mention to you guys, which I didn't say before, is that you do have different drive modes, which include rock, sand or mud, snow, auto, and sport. So right now I have it in auto, which probably auto is the equivalent of comfort. So aside from that, like I said, you know, suspension's pretty soft, steering is quite numb, doesn't feel like a very refined drive. Brake feel is also quite numb. At least there isn't a very heavy or very hard bite right off the top of the pedal. It's supposed to be a good vehicle for off-roading use. So if you're looking for a good mix of on-road and off-road drivability, this could be something that you would consider probably next to the Lexus GX. I still haven't had the opportunity to test drive the new Lexus GX, their fully redesigned one. A lot of good things have been said about it. It shares its platform with the new Toyota Land Cruiser and the Toyota 4Runner. I'm very curious to see how that is, but I would probably say that that's the Toyota Lexus product is probably better than this. But at the end of the day, I can't say that I was too impressed with the whole feel and driving impression of this vehicle. Well guys, I hope you enjoyed this review of the 2024 Jeep Grand Cherokee L Summit Reserve. Honestly speaking, I mean, for the price point, I think I'd probably consider other vehicles in its segment. I wasn't that impressed for, you know, its quality. It does have quite a bit of features, but at the end of the day, you can get other vehicles in its same class that offer the same type of features and give you more of a special feel when you drive it. For example, like the Lexus GX or the Genesis GV80, I'd even consider, you know, a moderately trimmed German vehicle like a Mercedes GLE or even a BMW X5. At the end of the day though, it really comes down to what you're looking for. The driving, I wasn't that impressed. It is actually a little bit less refined than some of the other competition, but I mean, if you're looking for off-roading, this does do a good job though. Unfortunately, I didn't get to test it off-roading, but it is known for its off-roading capabilities. So this would probably compete quite well with the Lexus GX. But as always, I want to give a huge thanks to Aston Martin of Orlando for allowing me to review this vehicle. If you guys want, take a look at their website, take a look at their inventory. This car is currently up for sale right now. And stay tuned for additional content, for additional reviews in the coming weeks. Thank you very much for all the likes, all the views, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Thanks, guys. Take care. Bye-bye.